Good morning, everyone, from Dunrovin Ranch in Lolo, Montana. Welcome back to Horsing Around. We're a little bit late this morning because one of our horses, Mickey, is not presenting himself as being in total good health. And this is one of the reasons that we do our little session with each horse as we go to get them, so that we can look at the horse and be careful about noticing anything that's different. And good for Ant. Ant got Mickey out, and he noticed that he isn't crossing his hind legs. He's moving kind of in an awkward fashion. And I'm not quite sure what it is. He's definitely not on his game today. So we have put him in a stall where it is shady. And I have called the vet clinic. And I want to talk to a vet because I suspect he's having what's called an episode of tying up, which means a big muscle cramp in your hindquarters, which can be a dangerous thing if it goes on for a long period of time. So I want to make sure that Mickey's not in any kind of situation. So Ant has switched horses, and everybody knows that this is Paula. Say hello, Paula. And Ant, Anthony Greenwater, Paula Goldberg, and Colleen Letty. And they've been playing around with horses with me for the last 4 weeks. And this week, we're going to talk about saddles and how to fit a saddle and how to get on and then start riding. And the horse that is partnering with Ant today is our youngest horse, Ant. His name is Mystery. And I will have you get on, but I also want you to be very aware he hasn't been ridden all year, okay? And what does that mean? Probably nothing. He's a very cooperative horse, but he's also a young horse that has not been in the string for years on years. He's not been there, done that kind of a horse like Mickey was, okay? So you want to take things slowly with a horse like that. So we're going to just do some walking in the arena, get on and off of him, just make sure he's all kind of solid with that before we do anything at a little more speed. And this is something really typical of what happens in the spring after the horses have been off for a long time. You know, they can be too full of energy. They can kind of forgotten what it's like to have a rider. And so there can be some minor issues. Now, I've never seen that in Mystery, but that doesn't mean that it couldn't happen. So I just want to go slower with him than I would these other two who have been around many different blocks, okay? So today we're going to talk about saddles, and I want to go through and make sure that the saddles that they used last year fit them for this year. And just like horses' body, just like people's body changes over time as they age, so do horses. And interestingly enough, I try to bring my horses into the summer a little overweight. And the reason for that is generally in the summer they work hard. They walk off those pounds, and you want them a little bit overweight to start the season off if it's going to be a difficult season. But it's not a difficult season, and I had no idea of knowing that during the winter months. So they are a little overweight. They're not in good shape. And normally our horses are brought in March, where they're used in our pony clubs. They do a lot of work in the arena that starts to build up the muscle again and to take off some of that winter fat. And they have not had that opportunity this year. So it's a different year for everybody. But let's first go into the tackle. I assume that Paula may have shown people.
Yeah, although with Garnet, there's a list that Kelly made that says what number saddle is his.
Yeah.
So I cleaned that off.
Right.
And then we looked, and the saddle next to it, that saddle didn't, the name tag was not Garnet's. The saddle next to it had his name tag. So I'm not actually sure.
Well, that's a good thing we'll go over which one fits the best.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I did bring the tree out if you wanted to,
Yeah, I will show that. And we have a pack saddle somewhere. I probably should get that out. That really shows people what a saddle does. And maybe you've groomed all of these horses. So now the next thing we need to do is get their pads. And their pads are color-coded. And let's get a pad, and I'll show people why we use the pads that we do use. Okay, you want to just get a pad for me? Again, because horses' shape changes with the seasons and with age, you know, you can correct a bad saddle fit with blankets, with pads. And it's kind of like Dr. Schul pads in your shoes. If you need to, some people have a different foot, or the right foot is slightly different than the left foot, and they make some adjustments in how they use their shoes. Well, it's the same thing with horses. Some horses have more muscle on the right side than on the left side, and there's all of these little adjustments that you can make if you use the right pad. And so thank you very much. This looks like Monty's pad. Huh?
Well, it was in Garnet's slot.
Garnet, okay. Oh yeah, Flash is old set. Okay. So if James can move in closely here, this is what's called this is a diamond wool adjustable pad. And I really like this adjustable part of it. It has 3 compartments. They go from the front to the back, and this allows you to adjust where the pad hits the saddle. Okay, so let's just take a look at this right now. There's a little bit of a notch here, and that goes towards the horse's head. Okay, this fits where his neck comes in, all right? So there's a pad at the top, which would be right around his shoulder area. So you would put a pad in these front sections if your saddle was pinching your horse at that particular place, or if it was not allowing some air to get underneath the saddle pad. You want this to have a little bit of air, because when you are going out in the backcountry for all day, your horse is really going to sweat, and you want some air to come in underneath the saddle as much as possible. And then there are some horses that have a little bit of a sway back, so that the saddle is not completely supported by the back as well. So then you put shims in this middle part, okay, to help bring the pad up to meet the saddle. And then shims in the back, of course, would be if the saddle is coming up off of the back, so it's kind of doing some pressure. So basically, the first thing you do is with a saddle, you start with no pad, okay? So you put the saddle on a horse, no pad at all. And you start to see, where are the problems with this saddle fitting that horse? That gives you some indications of how you might use the pad to make the corrections. And when you're buying a brand new saddle, you could go through a whole bunch of different trials. And let me get a saddle out here for you right now so that we can take a look. And I'm going to use a really light saddle just because I don't pick up heavy things anymore. But this is a nice light Cordura saddle. Thank you. Cordura means it's not made out of leather. It is made out of synthetic, except for the seat. The seat is leather. But I want you to look. This is called the gullet of a saddle. And this part right here is hardwood. You can feel it, hear it. And what this is called the tree of the saddle. And the tree of the saddle is created in various ways for different kinds of horses. You can have a wide tree for a big barreled saddle, and you'd have a narrow tree for a narrow horse saddle. But now I want you to think about what you can fix with the pad and what you can't fix with the pad. So I have an operation where I have lots of different horses that come and go. So I have purchased saddles that have a wide tree, because you can use the pad to build up to the tree, But if you have a narrow tree saddle and you have a wide horse, there's no way in heck that you can fit that saddle to that horse. You can't take away, but you can add. And so I have tended to buy all of my saddles with wide, what are called wide trees. And so when you buy a saddle, and for your horse, when you get a horse, you really want to pay attention to all of that and make sure that you buy a saddle that will adjust to your horse's body as it changes over time. Now, if you have a really narrow horse like an Arabian who's going to stay narrow even as they gain weight, you know, the more padding you put under the saddle, the more rolly it gets, the less effective it is. So you don't want to always use a wide saddle for a narrow horse that's going to be narrow throughout its lifetime. But it's really important that, you know, that as the horse changes, that you're able to adapt your saddle to it. And some English saddles, which are a little bit different than, I can bring one out at a different time and show people, they have what are called adjustable trees. And there are even such things as treeless saddles. And those use pads instead of anything really hard like this. So one of the questions I get from people a lot when I talk about saddles is, why is a Western saddle different than an English saddle? And I'm going to ask one of you guys to speculate. Ant, give me a speculation why an English saddle might be different.
English saddles usually don't have a horn.
They don't have a horn, and why might that be?
Use this weight for what they're doing.
And that's because they're not working with cows. Yeah. Western saddles, all Australian saddles, all South American saddles, wherever you're working with cattle, you have a saddle with a tree, and generally with a horn, or some way to affix a cow to the saddle. And that's one of the reasons that treeless saddles are not very popular in the Western world, is because I want you to think about what would happen if you'd hold this for a minute for me, Aunt. Okay? If I had a cow pulling on the horn of your saddle, what's that going to tend to do? Your cow is up here. It's going to tip your saddle right up. It's going to tip your saddle up. And many Western saddles have a place for what we call a rear cinch. And that rear cinch goes behind the regular cinch, and it is there only to keep the saddle down if you've got something pulling it on the horn, okay? You don't use a back cinch unless you're going to be working with cattle, because its sole purpose is to make sure that the saddle stays down when you've got a cow, you've got force on the horn. And you'll also notice in the Western world, the more you use your saddle for roping, the heavier the saddle, the larger the horn. I mean, this is not a very good saddle for cattle. It's got a small horn. It's not that sturdy. But if you're out roping cattle all day, your saddle is going to get some really tremendous pressure. And so you need a more sturdy saddle. So oftentimes, I mean, this saddle probably weighs what, maybe 8 pounds, 10 pounds?
Probably 12, but okay.
Okay, 12. All right, 12. But not 20. Not 20, right?
No, not
Okay, all right. A really good Western saddle for roping would weigh 50. I mean, it's that big a difference, and it's so much more sturdy, okay? So what we're looking for when we put the saddle on the horse is a couple of things. I'm going to walk over here and talk about the anatomy of a horse here for just a moment. This is Dugan. Hi, Dugan. And this is the area that we call the withers. And it's the highest part of the horse when it doesn't have its head up. It's the highest part of the body of the horse. And it's actually where the shoulders come together. Maybe this next week I'll put up a diagram of the anatomy of a horse, the skeleton of a horse. Horses' shoulders do not connect. They float in tendons and muscles right around the spine. So the spine of the horse comes all the way from the head, all the way back down and through the tail, okay? So the main purpose of the saddle is to keep the rider off the spine, okay? So if you want to keep your weight off the spine and suspended, I don't know if you've ever noticed jockeys, tiny little saddles, and their stirrups are so high that they are crouched over the horse. The horse moves under them. They don't sit on the horse at all. And their saddles are really built to just suspend their weight right up over the horse. The horse moves underneath it. So the less weight that you're putting on the horse, the more easy and fluid your horse can move. So the trick of putting a saddle on a horse is to make sure you've got it in the right position so that you can carry as much of your weight as possible off of the spine and off of the back, which means you want to have the tree of the western saddle to come right behind the shoulder blade. You want to come up here and feel the shoulder blade? Right there. Feel the shoulder blade? Yeah. Okay. It's right underneath the withers, right there. Okay. So your saddle should graze the shoulder blade. You want it far enough forward that the massive muscles in that shoulder is carrying your weight, but not the shoulder blade. Is this making sense? So it's not on the blade, but it's on the muscles surrounding the blade. And really, the only way to absolutely be certain that your saddle is correct is to, first of all, do everything you can on the ground, get your saddle really nicely situated, and then get on the saddle and have somebody put their hand on the shoulder. Now, why is that? That's because your weight is going to change the way that saddle sits. You can see that. You can see that as you put weight in the back, that's going to tilt the saddle one way or the other, depending on how you sit your saddle. And so oftentimes a saddle will seem like it's pinching on the ground, but once you put weight, which is behind it, it picks it up off of the shoulder. And many saddles for gaited horses, which are all Tennessee walking horses, are created with what's called a flare in the tree of the saddle. And that means it kind of flares open so that it gives that shoulder a little bit more room. And why does that do that for a gaited horse? Well, because first of all, a horse carries 60% of its own weight on its forelegs, okay, 60%. So that's a lot of weight here. And with a walking horse, because the way they are built in terms of their back and everything, they carry a little bit more. So you really want to give them, and they have more motion out of their shoulders than their hindquarters. So you really want to be careful with a gaited horse that their shoulders are not being impinged by the saddle. We have a couple of saddles that are a gaited saddle. In fact, if you want to go and get my saddle, this is a heavy saddle, by the way. Can you show Ann where it is? And I'll show you the difference. It's a gaited horse saddle, and it has a flare. Okay? Lot to learn.
Information, yeah.
Lot to learn.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now. Okay. So let's just lean this one up a little bit. And I don't know if everybody can see this on the camera, but if you feel, and I'll have each one of you come and feel this, I have a really heavy saddle because I was often the one carrying all kinds of saddlebags and all kinds of extra weight and dallying other horses. If I'm in the backcountry and somebody has an issue with a horse, I did this one time on the trail with 2 children. I had to dally their horses off my horse. Okay, so I have almost a roper's kind of a saddle because I've had other horses pulling on my saddle, not cattle, but other horses, all right? So you can feel in here, as you get up here, that feel that one, and then come and feel this one. This one it comes up and comes out a little bit, whereas this one's straight. This one's specifically designed for a walking horse. You can even see it a little bit, that it has see how it widens at the top here? See how it widens as opposed to that one? That one's really pretty straight. Whereas this one comes up, you can see it kind of flares out. And that's specifically for a gaited horse. So if you're going to...
Would a saddle like this be inappropriate for a non-gaited horse?
No, it wouldn't, but you might want to pad to it. Okay, it would not be inappropriate. But I highly recommend, if you're going to get a horse, and I think you are, really think about how you're going to use that horse and make sure that the saddle is compatible. If you have a gaited horse, I would go for a gaited saddle, or one that had, a wide enough flare in the front that gave your horse all of its shoulder movement. Okay? All right, you can put this one back. This weighs a ton. All leather. Yeah, and you see I have these long strings because I tie junk all over my horses. And as a guide, that's what you do. You have any accident happens and you need to take anything from anybody else, you put it on your saddle with you. So you're kind of like the emergency vehicle out there with everybody else. So that's why it's important to have a really good saddle. So let's start by finding the saddle that has been identified for your horse, and let's put them on without a blanket first. And then I want you to, number one, put it where you think it's going to be, where it should be. Now remember what I said. It should graze that shoulder. Just graze it, all right? Right behind. If you get it too far behind, you are putting all of the weight on the horse's back. You've missed that nice, strong shoulder muscle. You want it on that shoulder muscle, but you don't want it on the shoulder blade. Okay, so go ahead and get the saddle that has been identified for your horse, and I think you're missing one right now, right? Is this one for Mystery?
No, for Mickey and Mystery. They were both assigned number 3, so...
Okay, all right, let's try this one then. Okay, so first of all, you'll see that we have the cinch and everything is all on one side. Everything is kind of neatly tied. These are called, this is your breastplate. So in just putting a saddle up, I would put everything up on the saddle so that you're not, let's see if I can put this right up over the horn. Just get it out of the way for the time being so that you have more latitude with it. I'm just going to make it a little bit longer here. These saddles have been, different parts have come from different, I'm just going to make this long enough so you can get it over there. Get it out of the way. It's a breast collar. I'll talk about breast collars here in a little bit. Okay, but all I'm trying to do is get a clear side to the saddle. Let me show you how to put a saddle on the way a horse is expecting you to, all right? So again, I'm going to put this over the... I'm just going to undo this for a minute. Okay. So here I have what's called a clean edge. And so horses expect you to come from their left side. All tack is created so that you do it from the left side, all right? So the way I put a saddle on, and there are a number of ways. Some people throw with their shoulder up on top of the horse. I don't tend to do it that way, but that's a perfectly fine way to do it. But what I tend to do is come at the horse with what's called a clean edge, get the stirrup over, so now I have everything except what's going to go on the horse out of my way. See? Okay, so I'm going to go over to Dugan, and I'm going to put this on him. And this is what I want you to do, and he's expecting me from this side. So, right. So, I would like each of you to do that and to play around with where that saddle fits, and then tell me when you think you have it correct. All right?
Don't strap anything.
Pardon?
Don't strap anything.
No strapping in. I want you to come over here and put the horse, put it back on here, Colleen, so you're getting accustomed to it.
A little while.
Put your microphone back on.
Oh. Technical wardrobe malfunction. Sorry about that. You think that saddle is too small?
So that's saddle number 5, yeah? Or
Yeah.
is that saddle number
It has name on it.
7? Okay. So I think that might be saddle number 7. I'll note that. It's too small.
Let's bring it up a little bit first. Yeah, I agree. There
There was an alternative.
yeah, let's get the alternative. I agree with you on that. Try the alternative. Okay, so there are two things that you kind of want to play around with, and I'll do it here so people can watch, all right? So if the saddle's in the correct position, it should sort of feel like it. You know what I'm saying? You can sort of almost feel that it's in the right spot because it's holding its place. You know, a really good horseback rider, if the saddle's in the correct position, can get on from the ground without it being cinched up. All right? Now, none of you can do that yet, but you can get there, all right? But it's a matter of balance. Now, in this particular case, the other thing you want to do is make sure that it's near the shoulder. And you can see that it's not. Here's the shoulder right here. And it's not grazing it. It's behind.
So it's too low.
It's too far back. This would be problematic. So what you want is, this is, right, the tree should come right up to the shoulder. And then there's the part of the saddle that is not covered by the tree should, yes. Feel the difference? Okay, so your hand should be able to go under and feel the shoulder blade without being pinched by the saddle. But you should be right at the shoulder. Right at the shoulder without pinching it. So, and you can see that the hard part here is right behind the shoulder blade. The horn comes right behind it. Feel where that is relative to the shoulder blade. Right smack behind it. Okay, you can feel in the saddle, feel this. That's the hard part right there. This is soft. This is just part of the skirt of the saddle. This part, right there.
Yeah.
Okay, that's got to be right immediately behind the shoulder blade. Okay? So otherwise, you're putting the weight farther back on the horse's back, which is going to be very tiresome for him. Okay? So and I would say that, let me ask you, what do you think of this fit? Well, think about what's happening here. It comes, it grazes. You can put your hand underneath here, right? Your hand fits comfortably. Is it coming up on the back? Does it seem to be? It seems to be a little bit of a gap here in the middle. So that means what in terms of our blanket? You might want to shim to get the middle part, not the front and the back, but the middle part. And maybe his pad has that already, I don't know. But can you feel that? You know, again, put your hand back there, and it's touching but not pinching.
Yeah.
But you can see that it's not coming down in the middle. So what that means is your weight will be carried here and here, not evenly distributed. Okay. Yeah. So we want to take that right up off of it. Okay. All right. So let's look at your saddle. Okay. So the same thing here. You're a little far back. You see what I'm saying here? Look at feel where the hard part of the saddle is. It's got to come up and just graze. You're talking about a quarter of an inch. There you go. There you go. And you can almost feel that it's the right spot. And put your hand underneath here. This too needs a little bit of padding in the middle. Yep. Okay. All right, next. Let's bring it up just a tad. Yeah. This is better. So you see the hard part has to come just right behind the shoulder, just right behind it, just immediately behind it. And you'll see when you get on, I'm going to have you put your hand in when other people ride. You'll see that shoulder moves forward. Okay, so once you're in it, it's really important that you start with it right here. Okay?
What about
So.
this saddle has pads in the back?
Yeah, I would say that this is a little too close in the back, but not in the middle. So let's try. All right, let's go get your pads then, and let's take your saddles off and put your pads on, and then we're going to do the same. Hello, mister. Hello, old boy. How are you? How are you? Saddle fit is as much an art as it is a science. And there are lots of different things that people do to try to get the right saddle fit. There are ways of using flour, for example. You can put flour along the back of a horse and put a saddle on it, and the flour will tell you exactly where the where the saddle is pinching on the horse, because it will leave a mark. Similarly, when you exercise a horse rigorously and it starts to sweat, one of the things that you want to pay attention to is the sweat pattern when you get off of the horse. You want to see that its back is uniformly sweating underneath where the saddle is. If there are any dry spots, that's because your saddle was pinching the horse and it couldn't even sweat. You understand what I'm saying? So if when you buy a saddle, I always bought saddles, Aunt, on a buyback proposition. And I never bought a saddle until I took it out in the hills and rode the horse. And in fact, when I bought my fancy gated horse saddle, and it was a very expensive saddle, I used a sheet so that I didn't damage the saddle at all. I put a sheet over my horse, and we looked like something really crazy out in the hills, but I wanted to make sure I wasn't going to damage the saddle anyway, but I really wanted to see the performance of that saddle under stress going up hills and down hills and over a lot of different kind of territory, because it's really not until you get into those kinds of situations where you're going up hills and you're going down hills that you can really say this saddle really fits. You go to a store and put the saddle on the horse and things may look just fine. But again, every horse's body moves differently, every person's body moves differently, and every rider sits differently in the saddle. So what you're looking for, if it's for your own horse, is the combination of the way you ride your horse, what you're going to use your horse for, and the saddle that gives the best fit for everybody. And of course, that means that you also have to evaluate a saddle for your own comfort. Does it help you sit in the right place, for example? Is it stretching your legs out? So you're really trying to fit two different entities with one piece of equipment. So I always tell people, be really careful about buying that saddle. I would rather buy a brand new $2,000, $2,500 saddle that fits me and my horse and is going to be good for 15 years, of good wear, than to, go on the cheap end. You're just going to, you can lame your horse and you can lame yourself with poor saddle fit on both sides. Is this making sense? And it's one thing for me to put a guest in a horse for 2 hours. It's another thing for you to go out 7, 8, 9, 10 hours and sit in a saddle. And you'll notice how my stirrups, for example, were very wide. When I was endurance riding, what I found was my feet would go to sleep because I had just a part of my foot on the saddle stirrup for hours, for 12, 15, 14 hours, And by that time, my feet were going to sleep. So I wanted a wider place for my foot to rest so that I wasn't getting that. So there's all kinds of aspects to this in terms of how you're going to be using the saddle, okay? So go ahead and take the saddles off, put the blankets on, and refit the saddles to the blankets, okay? And do everything from the left side. Yep.
Take it out from the left side too.
Now, eventually, you'll be able to do it on either side, no problem. And your horse should be able to do that as well.
I have a couple of little blankets for it.
What's that?
I have a couple of little blankets for it.
Okay. Why don't you bring your horse out here where people can see you? That would be,
The other side?
yeah, just bring him to the other side and explain. All right? He's fine. He won't kick. Okay, this is Mr. Garnet here. Okay. Okay.
So, well, one of the things somebody taught me was you start the blanket up too high and then slide it back to where you're going to want it, because that way their fur,
That's a very good point. Yep, absolutely.
like, get wrinkled under there or
Right.
whatever.
And this, of course, is why when you're grooming a horse, you really want to make sure, it doesn't matter whether their legs are groomed, but this part really matters, because if you have bits of grime in there, it's just like you wearing a belt with a stone underneath it. It hurts, you know? So you want to make sure, and the same thing where the cinch is going to go, all right?
And then, once the saddle is on, I was told to kind of raise the blanket.
Yes, that's exactly right. We'll go over that. And what you try to do is create a ventilation tunnel, and you do it by going on both sides. So your blanket allows for ventilation to come in from the next. All right. Very good. Thank you. All right. So you've got yours done, Ant.
I like to think so, although
What's
add
that?
in there, you kind of lose your index points a little bit. It's harder to tell. where the cars are
That's why you
going.
start with notepad. Yeah, that's exactly why you start with notepad. And what's the pad for, by the way?
Pick up those voids so you get even distribution of your weight.
That plus the sweat. You know, the horse is going to sweat, and it's like you're putting, a strapping on a pack without a shirt on. It's going to rub your skin, and you're going to get raw. And so what you want to do is have a pad that, helps absorb some of the sweat, and also keeps the saddle from rubbing on the skin.
That's why wool in some fashion is.
That's a very good question. That is by far my preferred material. And let me tell you, you can buy synthetic pads, which are neoprene, and they will claim that they have all of the holes for sweating. But I have tried those kind of pads, particularly when I was endurance racing, because they will sell them as that they mold to the horse's back, which they do. Sometimes it's like a rubber that molds to your back just like everything else, but they don't sweat. They just don't sweat like a wool pad does. And that's the other thing for cinches. We'll get into the cinches a little bit later, and that is what goes under. But the same thing, a horse is really going to sweat wherever that saddle comes into contact with it. So wool is the way to go, all right? So why don't you walk me through this, Ant?
I did what Paula was explaining.
Uh-huh.
Pad on a little high on the withers, down back where it kind of looked like the right spots. Going away. Then I'd already kind of eyeballed where the horn should be
Right,
on the withers. Now it's you can't really see what's happening. quite
right.
easily.
You can't put your hand back here, though. And you've got it really nice. It's right behind the shoulder, okay?
And then if I put a little weight here, I feel like taken up because there is some compression here. So it wasn't a big void in there. I don't know if I needed it.
We'll figure that out once you get on.
Yeah.
Because I think that's gonna tell us whether, and this is part this is gonna be your easiest part to fit at first, because you can, even while you're riding, you can put your hand down there to see if your saddle is rubbing right there, but you can't for the back and for the middle, and that's where your sweat patterns really come into play. Because if you're on your own and trying to, really get the right fit, go out and ride your horse, and you'll see whether whether it's being carried by its entire back or not. And so that's part of, you never get it right away. It's just like a lot of things, you have to kind of try it out. Okay, so let's go to the others, and then I'll show you how to cinch up a saddle. All right. Yeah, he's a sweetheart. These guys are really sweet. Feel under the pad now. Shoulder. Okay, and then let's do it. And this comes up a little bit. Just you should be able to put your hand in here, so that there's a little bit of air. All right. But that looks good because I can feel the hard part, and it's just right behind the shoulder.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So let's go look at Garnet. This is a much better fit than the other one was. Much better. Yeah, I think we're good to go here. We're good to get started. So I'm going to have one of you bring your horse up where we can turn around and people can watch us cinch up a saddle. Why don't you bring... Huh?
You can demonstrate with us and that way they can do it.
Okay, that's fine. Okay. All right. Now I have altered your breast colors, so it's not, you're going to have to go back to what your breast colors were here in a minute. Okay. Now,
Or I guess the other way.
yeah, let's do it on the other side so people can watch. Okay. So I do things very differently than a lot of people do, and I do it for a reason. I have done a lot of packing into the Bob Marshall and places like that, and so I think it's really important that you are able to do everything on a horse's saddle from one side, that you don't walk around the horse. Now, why is that? I could have 10 saddles that I'm putting on, horses that are on a high line, on uneven ground, and they're close to each other, and they're antsy, all right? So if I'm going back and forth around the horse to get everything adjusted on one saddle, number one, I'm using a lot of energy that I don't want to use. Number two, every time I go around the horse, all the horses down the line have to move over. It just amps everybody up. And so you'll find that people who are outfitters do things a little bit differently than everybody else, and they do it because they do things in different circumstances. And so, none of my ranch managers ever bought into my practice except a couple of them because they didn't go back out into the wilds, but I did a lot, and so I'm a Nazi about this, all right? And so when I put a saddle away, I try to make sure that everything is handy on the left side, that I can do everything from the left side, all right? So I probably would have put this, the only thing that is a problem here now, and that's because this saddle has been stored as opposed to me putting it away between rides. Okay, I'm not quite there with all of this, and that's because right now, I can do this breast collar here in a minute, but I don't, what I normally would do is take the cinch out of its keeper, and I would have the cinch, which is over here, it's got a keeper, and I would have the cinch on top of the saddle up here, so I had access to it. Okay, so I'll show you how to do that eventually, but and I'll show you how to put a saddle away so that it all happens, all on one side. And you want to be able to take a saddle off all on one side. And again, think if you're on a really steep hill and you're in this odd situation, you want to be able to do this safely. So, all right. So the first thing on when you put a saddle on, the first thing that gets adjusted and that gets put on is the cinch. First on, last off, okay? The cinch is what holds the saddle to the horse, and it's the only thing that holds the saddle to the horse. You've got a breast collar, it will not hold the saddle to the horse. All a breast collar does is keep the saddle from moving back, okay? And people who ride in arenas don't use breast collars because they don't go up hills. But if you're going to be going up and down hills, you want a breast collar, all right? And if you're going down really steep hills, and I'll show you later, you want a crooper, which goes under their tail. If you're really doing really up and down work, you want a crooper as well, all right? That keeps the saddle from moving laterally on the horse, and it also means you can cinch the horse up less tight. And why is that important? If you're all day going up and down hills, your horse is going to be working hard. So you want that cinch to not be the only thing that's keeping the saddle in this right spot, all right? So what I do is I throw the cinch over here, down, and then I get what's called the latigo, which is the strap to which you attach the cinch, all right? And then I always tell people, again, I miss safety, I just am. again, I do this because if I'm on a slope and there's rocks and it's uneven ground and all of that kind of stuff, and you've got other horses jostling and your horse could move, I always squat instead of bend. You are so much more stable if you are squatting. That horse moves, I can move out quickly and not tip over. Okay, so I squat to get it, and I get the cinch, all right? And then I'm going to go through the buckle. Thank you. And I'm going to go up and through this is a bit kind of a funny saddle. It has two places for the cinch, and I'll probably do it this way. And then I'll go back through. I think I did this wrong. I'm not used to these kind of. I think I want the buckle part. Nope. I'm not used to these kind of buckles. I don't ever use this kind for myself. Okay, so yeah, so you really want the buckle part here, all right? So how tight do I want that? I'm going to come back through here where the buckle is, and I'm going to buckle it, but how tight do I want this? Well, I want it tight enough that the saddle's not going to move, but that I'm not hurting my horse. And the other thing is, I pull with my back, not with my arms. And part of that is out of necessity, out of crash shoulder. So, you know, pull up with your back, pull up. And now that's too much. That's just a little too much. Why is it a little too much? My hand, I can get my hand in there, but it's tight. It's really tight, okay? So I'm going to go to the next one down, okay? The next one down. And that would be this hole right here. I'm going to put it in the buckle. I'm not able to do that, I do not know. There we go. And then to make sure that it's flat, I pull this up. See how that brought the buckle up? This buckle here. And then I'm going to put the strap either through the top, or if it's really a long latigo, I may do something a little fancier with it. Okay, so come and feel. Okay, this is about what you want. It's tight as you first get on, but it's going to loosen as you move along. So you should be able to put your hand in there flat against it, all right? Okay, now there are a couple of other issues here. Go ahead. Okay, the issues are you don't want the buckle lower than about here. You don't want it where my hand is. And that's, again, you look at the anatomy of the horse, there's a group of veins there. You're gonna put pressure on those, on that blood flow, okay? So you want the buckle off the blood flow. And you want it in kind of the pocket where the cinch is far enough back that his front leg is not going to be rubbing up against it as he moves. What you can end up doing is creating what's called a gall. If you're too far forward, this is going to swell up, and it creates it's just like a blister, but it's on the horse's body instead of on its foot. So it's called a gall. All right. So then I bring this stirrup down.
Do you ever tighten the cinch in like 2 steps to let the horse kind of breathe a little and relax?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I'm going to, depending upon what my next move is for this horse, I put the cinch at different places. If I was going to put this horse in a trailer and take him to the trailhead, I would have it loose, much looser than this. And what I would do is I would put this like this. And why do I do that? It reminds me when I go to get on the horse that the cinch is loose. Okay, it's like a little yellow sticky. Okay, but in a situation like that, I'm gonna put it up here. What I think it would be good for an arena ride. All right, And yes, once we get going, I'll have you check it for sure. And this is something, you know, again, the horse and the saddle will ultimately mold to each other, and you're going to have the hook is going to be, you're going to know exactly where to put it, because it's, you know, you've got leather memory, everything's going on, right? Now, having said that, in the spring when my horses are fatter, it's one, you know, looser, all right? But this won't loosen up much after he moves. But you know, in the back country, again, if you're really working a horse hard, they can lose weight during a ride. They're sweating a lot. So you may have to at lunchtime get off and check your cinch to make sure that it's still providing the support that it needs to. You understand what I'm saying? So there's no one size fits all. It kind of depends on what you're doing. And again, if you're going to be roping cattle, you want it tighter than if you're going to be in the mountains all day and he's going to be moving up and down, and you want some more room for him to be, all right? So then this is what's called...
More cinching, maybe?
What's that?
15.
Yes. Oh, good for you. Thank you. And I was going to get to that with the breast collar. Yeah, you're just ahead of me a little bit here. But there's some rings here, and the rings are for attaching the breast collar, and they should be kind of in the middle of the horse, all right? And if they aren't, then you have to go to the other side, the off side, and you adjust the cinch height on the off side, okay? So this is where I figure that out, is with the breast collar. And the breast collar is intended to keep the saddle in place, not laterally, but vertically, you know, front to tail. So this just goes over, and as I said, this is the last thing that you hook on and the first thing that you hook off. And you can see why. If your horse were to spook and you had the breast collar on but without the cinch, the saddle will turn, it'll get underneath him, and he gets spooked and starts running, and now he has a saddle that he's dragging between his legs. Okay, so it's really important that that cinch is the first thing on, last thing off, all right? And so what I do here, you can see that this buckle has two sides, one that has a clasp that's kind of pointy. That should be away from the horse. You don't want that sticking in the horse, okay? So I clip this to the front or the back. It sort of depends on, you have an option depending upon how well the breast collar is going to fit. And again, that depends on what you're doing. You can have a really loose breast collar in an arena, it doesn't really matter. But if you're going up and down hills, you want that to be in the right spot. You don't want it to be chafing his chest. At the same time, you want it to be doing its job, and that is keeping the saddle from moving back. All right? So this just goes in this buckle right here. And you can see that I've done everything from the one side of the saddle. I didn't have to walk around. And that in part depends on, and I'm going to just put it here. That's a little tight for what we're going to use it. We don't need it right now. Tight. And there you go. And to your point, Aunt, you know, again, if a good horseman rides his horse out and then checks all these things, because it really does depend on the terrain that you're using, that you're in. You know, what might be just fine for an arena is not going to be fine out on the hills where you're going through a lot of up and down work, and you can see that. It's like your own backpack. You can get away with quite a bit just on the streets of Missoula, but if you're doing a lot of hiking, you know, you want it fitting differently. So that's exactly the same here, okay? So let's have each of you bring your horse out and do that. You want to come first, Aunt? Bring, and let me show you how to get this. I'll hold him while you do the work. All right. Now remember, I loosened his breast collar so that it would go over the horn, and generally that's not what you're going to do. But you can adjust it either once you get it on him or afterwards. Kind of your choice. All right. So now, okay, I'm gonna take the cinch off on this side. It's because normally, you would not put your horse this away. You would have done this putting the saddle on. It would have been up here like this, so that you can get at it from that side. Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you. Okay. So, there you go. Yep. And you can get the stirrup out of your way. Just put it up over the horn, whatever. Now, I'm gonna show you something. See how nicely that unthreaded? There's a trick to threading it right. Otherwise, it's a big mess. And I'll show you when you take it off. Yes, the first one goes through here. That's when I made a mistake. The second one comes through here, because then you use the line. Now, you have a lot of latigo there. Look how long this latigo is. So you're running out of holes. You don't have any holes, not very many up here. I'd go another time around, so that you had a little more flexibility in terms of where you were going to put that. And see, if this were your horse, you would know you're going to go 2 on the upper and 1 on the lower. You see, this is just a matter of getting used to, because it's easier. That's what that whole roller thing is for. And like I said, I'm not used to those. So, wise man, he's doing it, going to redo it. And the roller thing makes it easier for you to tighten the cinch. That's what the whole purpose of that little roller. He's a little suspicious here. Yeah, he's a good boy. He's a really good boy. This is a good horse. This would make you a very good horse, by the way. He's an 8-year-old. He's perfect. He's a great horse. Yeah. There you go. There you go. And then pull the strap down. That'll. You did it right, the top strap, just what you were going to do before I interrupted you. There, that locks it in place. Yeah. There you go. Okay, and then you can put it there, you can put it anywhere you want.
Put it through the back hole?
Yep, people put it in all kinds of different places. Okay, so then you have the breast collar. Now, I undid part of the breast collar so it would fit over, so you're going to have to adjust. And I think I did it on the side. I'm not sure what I did. Okay, now, this is a very different kind of breast collar. This is from a Fred Hook saddle. And let's get this. All right. This has to be undone. This is a very interesting, see how it's attached differently. It goes over the neck like this, all right? And this is the side that I adjusted. So I'm going to readjust this side to where it should be, all right? So that you will be correctly positioned for the. I loosened it so you could get over the saddle horn. That's all I did. I loosened this one, gave you more. So that just goes over his neck. And what you do is you connect everything to the ring, not to the saddle. These 2 little straps connect the whole thing to the saddle, and you connect everything to the ring. All right? So every breast collar is a slightly different. This is off of a Fred Hook saddle. There you go. And why is this could be a preferable way? I really like Fred Hook saddles, by the way. I've got 5 of them, I think. Okay, so what does that tell us? Okay, it does. So this is very good. So first thing you do is get rid of anything, undo that part first. Because if he's going to move, you don't want to You don't want that to keep the saddle on, right? So you're going to have to undo it entirely on this side, all right? And it may be that his cinch is too long a cinch. And if that's the case,
Well, I think
yeah, it
Colleen
can,
said it was marked for either one.
okay. But you have, and you can see on this side that there are two different holes that are commonly used. So probably when you're using it on mystery, you have to move it up one. You understand what I'm saying? Same saddle, two different horses. Okay, let me show you how to do that. This is a really, actually you got it really, you've done it well. You got it. Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Okay, so you can see that this is, you're going to have to move it up.
Oh, yeah.
All right? So just move it up.
Oh, sorry. I was going to turn around, change my mind.
Okay, well, look and see where that's going to, just from this side, put the cinch down on him and see where you're going to get this in the middle. Okay, so it should be a little bit to this side. Pull on the cinch here and see if that's closer to the middle. I think it is. Yeah. By the time you cinch that, it's going to move a little bit your way. All right? I'm going to try it one down. Uncinch it. I'm going to do it on this side. I'm going to go one down. Just one down and see if that's better. Okay, try it now. I think that's better than the other way. Go ahead, I'd take this. Now, if this were, as you get accustomed here, I might take this off side and add a hole for him. You understand what I'm saying? So that one would fit just right for him. And that's why God made hole punchers. That's pretty good though. Not bad. Not perfect, but not bad. That is pretty far to your side, all right. It's either pretty far, the one side or the other, it needs a hole in the middle. No, it's pretty far to your side, all right. But let's just go with it right now, recognizing, and this is something that, we start riding this horse, you want to come and let's do this right. Get a hole punch and do it correctly. We're going to have to do this for all of the saddles, for all of the horses. This is a major deal normally that happens in March. Okay, so then you go with your rest collar. What's that?
I said once I learn what I'm doing, this will be good practice.
Very good practice. Yeah, the only thing you have to worry about on the offside is that you aren't twisting things. So you just use your hands to sort of figure it out. And now it is too far to your side, but...
This is kind of where we started.
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah, it needs a hole in between. At any rate, let's call it good right now. We're going to not get to Colleen. It's 11 o'clock already. Okay, Colleen.
Oh, that's me now?
Let's get Dugan. Everybody's eyes go up when there's an intruder here, and I'm looking to see if it has a band. Okay, so let's go on this side and take the saddle off of the keeper here. All right. and put it over your, so you can get at it from that side, all right? Thank you. While you're waiting, I want you to feel his hindquarters. Feel him up with your hands. And then I want you to go feel Mickey. Tell me if there's a difference. Feel him for softness. He should still be fairly hard, but not. I mean, you should be able to get a little bit of movement in there.
Very uniform, too.
Pardon?
It's uniform.
Yeah, and you can feel all of these horses, and you can put your. It's not rock hard, not rock hard.
Okay.
Right? Does that make sense?
Go through the hole again. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now come through where the buckle is this time. Come through the lower one. There you go. Other way.
From the back.
From the back. From the back. You gotta come up that way. Oh. From the back of the horse. Okay. There you go.
And line it up behind the other two steps. Do that by myself. Just slip it behind. There you go. Perfect.
Feels like it could be
Well, it's tight.
too tight. Not too tight.
Yeah. there
Too
you go.
tight, or is
no,
that okay?
No, that's right. So you can see you got a hole right here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
The buckle came up, so you're fine.
And then this is what's called a keeper, and you can put it right through here if you like. This is where people commonly do, or there's fine too.
Could I? Okay, so it's kind of
Either
my
way,
preference.
What do you think? Yeah. Was it hard?
Yeah, but it seems like it's not what I expected to feel. It's
Okay.
not that good. But he definitely
Yeah. Doesn't what? Yeah. Yeah. Okay, now see, we should have had that on the other side. Yeah. Okay, I think this is the one that no, I didn't. Not loosen this one. Again, this is one of these crazy ones here that we should. This has been twisted, and this is a function of the way it was put away for the winter. See how it's all twisted? Mm-hmm. So, yeah. And these things all means that you can't really, things just don't go right. Yeah. So you want this on the top. This should go this way. So you have, now you see how it's not going to be twisted? Mm-hmm. I did that wrong too. It's upside down. So I want this. Oh my.
So many straps.
Oh yeah. Yes.
And buckles.
There are, and you. That's just,
Nope.
now you can
No, I
see
just
how
took
it's
it off
just
there.
exactly right here. No, it's not. I want this. to go like this on this side. There we go. Last.
And then as far as with this brush color there, I don't.
That goes in the front of him. This goes between his legs. See the round thing here?
Mm-hmm.
This goes between his legs and this goes on the other side.
Okay.
All right?
So we're talking like that.
Yeah. Goes, no?
Go around to the other side of that.
Yeah. Let me get around over there. Okay, this goes between his legs. That goes between his legs and connects to the cinch. This.
So I don't know, do you start with this one?
Doesn't matter.
Okay.
All right. This goes between his legs. Put it between his legs. There should be a ring connected to the ring. There you go. And then this comes up here and connects to here. And this is
Should
probably
that fall in the center, like ideally?
yeah. And this is probably a little. This. I think the other one's too tight. Okay. This is a little bit tight on here. This needs to be adjusted.
Well, is it, saddle far enough up? That could be it too.
So I'm going to loosen this so it comes up a little bit more.
Is the saddle far enough up? That could be it too.
I think the saddle is fine. Okay. And I'm afraid this is all we're going to get to today because we got a late start and it's 11.
Just on camera.
Yeah, at least on camera. So I'm going to show everybody how to take their saddles off. And if you want to take it off and put it back on again, that would be a very good thing to do while it's fresh in your mind. But I'm going to have to depart. So let me start with this saddle, okay, to take it off. And then we'll work with this saddle independently to get it to fit. The breast collar is too tight on this horse, and it may not even be a good breast collar for him. You really have to match breast collars with the saddle, and I don't think this is a good match. So, but that's for another day. But let me show you how to take a saddle off so that it's all a really simple procedure, all right? And again, I do this because of the way I do things in the back country. So I take the cinch off here first, the breast collar, and then I take it off over here. I hand it to myself. I come back over and I clip. Again, I'm doing this so that when I put this saddle back on, it's going to be easy for me. So I do everything, get the saddle, everything over on my side, all right? So then I'm ready to take the cinch off because I've got the breast collar off. So I take the cinch off and I will show you what Aunt already knows, which you might want to come and watch, Colleen, you're right there. I call it a butterfly, all right? And what you do is the latigo comes from behind. You take a loop and that's the cinch. This is the latigo over here. Just watch me over here, okay? You come from behind with a loop, all right? And then I call it a butterfly because what I try to do is make those wings the same size by just going back and forth and back and forth, okay? And then I make a package out of it by going like this, just kind of tying it off. Now, the beauty of this is when I go to put on the latigo to the cinch, this just unthreads itself exactly correctly. You go around in loops, you're going to be there, a whole bunch of time getting the loops out of it. So you go from the back, start from the back, a loop. And, I just make a tidy little package. And, that's the other thing that I think is really important is that you know, as you start walking this saddle, I mean, I could be walking under very uneven ground in a campsite where I'm going to put everything away, you know, get it away from beavers and critters that could eat on my saddle. So I'm not tripping over my own stuff, right? And so the other thing that I do is I'm on the left side and I put this over like this. And I grab the saddle and I'm going to take the pad with it, all right? And I pull it towards me. And as I pull it towards me, I grab the cinch. And let me see if I can find it here. Right here is the cinch. And I got it underneath the saddle, that's where this is. And I put it in its keeper. I just leave this right on the horse. And the way a keeper works is you stick it in through here like so, and then you buckle it. So now that will stay. And now I have a package that is nothing is in my, I'm not going to trip over anything. There's nothing hanging. It's all in one side, and I did it all from one side. Okay? Well, that's the, I mean, I realize that a lot of people go back and forth, but let me tell you, you have 10 horses and you're doing this and you're hungry. So, right. Okay, so why doesn't everybody take their saddle off and then put it back on? And then next week, when we come, I would suggest, until otherwise told, Aunt, that you work with a mystery, okay? And let's just switch horses here until I figure out what's at issue with Mickey, all right? And so we'll the next time you come, have your horses saddled, have them all ready to go at 9:30, and we'll start with riding in the arena, okay? Sorry we didn't get that far, but that's life at a ranch. And with that, I'm going to say goodbye. Bye, everyone. Join us next Thursday. And by the way, this afternoon, we don't have a session with Mackenzie. He was not feeling well last night, so he was unable to come. But I will be welcoming Summer with Hobie Hare at 3:30. Please join me at 3:30. And thank you all for coming. Bye. Thanks, guys.